everybody, and welcome back to the Gaming Mix podcast. This is your official podcast from analogstickgaming.com. If you don't know me by now, my name is Jordan. I am one of the co-owners of analogstickgaming.com. But to my left, as always, is the founder of Analog Stick Gaming, Jeff. How are you, Jeff?
I'm a little tired. Overslept. My alarm just decided to not go off.
I'm glad that I messaged you because I'm always hesitant because we obviously record in the afternoon for me, but it's the morning for you because you're over there in Canada. And I always worry about waking you up, so I'm very careful about what time I message.
I was all set to get up at about 6:45, just because that gives me an hour and 15 minutes to kind of prep everything, and then we had the Indie World thing start at 8 Mountain Time.
So you will actually be seeing. This is unusual, but that's a good thing to mention. You will be seeing this episode later today on the same day of recording, because we recorded a previous episode but lost the audio, so we're kind of playing catch up on ourselves. But it's actually worked out quite well because there was a Nintendo Indie World event today, and so in future, when we can manage it, what we're going to try and do is when it lines up with our recording schedule or availability, we'll try and have an episode the same day as these sorts of events. So for example, Showcase season is coming up very soon. I'm sure that we'll try and do something for the Xbox Showcase if we can, and any other showcases that are going to happen around that time. So look forward to that. Remember to subscribe and all that stuff. But before we get to gaming, Jeff, I recently have been watching the Fallout TV show. I don't know if you have as well. I believe you have.
Never heard of it.
And I don't know about what you think, but I'm pretty impressed so far. Just be aware, people, we are going to spoil up to a certain point in the show. We haven't watched the whole show yet. Hey, lovely.
I have a Pip-Boy.
Lovely. I wish I had that. Yeah, we are going to spoil up to a certain point in the show, so, please be aware if you haven't watched it yet, because I think we've both watched about 4 episodes. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah. I finished episode 4 last night.
So we're gonna spoil up to that point there. But yeah, I want to start by talking about episode 1 because I was blown away almost immediately with this show because they really capture the tone of the universe so well, and it feels like a video game when you're watching it, but in a good way, and not in an overdone, very in your face way.
They're calling on all of the little elements that some movie and licensed type of properties when they're moving to something else, like if you see like a Dungeons and Dragons or like an adventure movie or whatever pull from it, they're not like really like injured and then taking a potion and then suddenly like they're all good, like they're not falling into those types of things. But when she's injured or whatever like that, she literally takes a stim pack, uses it, and then she's good to go. Like they're pulling from like little video game things.
Yeah, and they're not bashing you over the head with it either. That's the thing, is like...
No, they're being very subtle with them.
They're being very subtle, and they're doing that wink and nod at the camera almost when they know they need to, kind of thing. They're not overdoing it. They're not... I feel like some of these video game adaptations can overdo the fact that they're a video game, where it's kind of like, oh, you see that? You're meant to love that because we did that for you. Whereas this is just like, no, we want this to actually feel like a video game while you're watching it. And I would say even to the point where some of the people in this show, and I mean this in a really good way, some of them talk like NPCs in the video game. Like, the way that they actually talk and interact with the main characters is almost like they are NPCs.
That older guy is like, "You come back here, young lady," and then she leaves, and he's like, "Well, that didn't work."
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's some like there's some decent moments. I like the cousin that's like really into her.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah,
like
the
that,
fact
like
that they do the incest jokes really early, just like
well, like yeah, because it's like a fallout shelter where they're not allowed to that. Like we have rules against that. Like
yeah. I
there's some decent things, but like episode one does have that like where you get to like see the uh you get to kind of see the vault life,
yes, yeah, you do.
in a very like condensed form, and I think they do a good job with it. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's from Twin Peaks, and I also know him from I think How I Met Your Mother as the guy that's selling boats.
Her dad, right?
Um, yeah, her dad, like he's I think perfect in that role.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's a lot of really cool things that that show does to kind of
Hmm.
incorporate the Fallout world. And like I will say this as we're progressing through the other episodes, this episode had the worst choice of music as opposed to the other three episodes that
Yeah.
I watched,
Yeah, yeah.
because the first episode kind of avoids any like overlap of the music used in the games.
Yeah.
Whereas every single like when I heard like I don't want to set the world on fire, I think in episode
Yeah.
two, I
Yeah.
was fucking cheering. I
Well,
was like,
that's the
yes.
thing, and but that's why I actually really respect what they did, because they used this first episode to sort of set the expectation of like, yes, this is in a universe you know, and you're gonna see things and hear things and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff that you appreciate, but we are also doing our own thing, and I think Fallout as a franchise leads itself very well to them being able to do that. Like, they can do their own story within this world, and it just makes sense as long as they get the tone right, which they seem to have done so far.
Yeah.
Obviously, as we move forward, at the end of the first episode, we get the introduction of the ghoul, right? Even though we have seen him earlier in the episode, but before the bombs even drop. That was that.
Yeah.
Stuff happens. Like, yeah, that's strange. To I remember saying to you originally that I wasn't even sure that that was actually meant to be the same character, just because the way they handled it was a little bit weird. Um,
Oh yeah. See, I'm the exact opposite. I thought the way that they handled it specifically told you.
yeah, that's interesting, but man, that character's so cool. Like, as we go forward into the following episodes, that
Yeah.
whole bit in the town where he's just like waiting for the guy to turn up with the dog, and oh yeah, I don't know, man. Like, he's just shooting people left and right, absolute
Yeah.
carnage. The bit where he sat down and he's like, "Oh, I'd give you one of these tomatoes, but you've got a hole in your neck." It's like they somehow managed to do this thing, and I mentioned this to you before. They do what the games do, where they have these super serious moments, but they keep the underlying comedy there all the time,
Yeah.
and it's
And
so
it's not over your
clever.
face too. Like
Yeah,
the jokes and stuff like that are not meant to be like, ha ha ha, we said something funny. You need to laugh now. Like
yeah.
it's not. It's kind of like situational stuff.
Hmm.
Like like the one thing in the first episode that kind of bugged me until I watched the first episode again was like you see her like this lady like painting the wall after because of all the blood. But then you see a bloody wall with a poster, and the guy rips the poster off and just puts a new poster up over the bloody wall. Like it's one of those things where it's like I'm pretty sure that they knew like no, don't paint it, just put it over that. And I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I did. There was another, and I believe that this must have been episode 2 as well. But when she gets to the town, the Vault Dweller gets to the town, Lucy, and
Yeah,
she goes into that shop, and the woman just starts laughing at her. Like, I thought that was
yeah. It's like,
brilliant.
well, how are you gonna save America? It's like, we just are.
It was.
Like
I loved that old lady character because she felt like one of those. If I can translate it to a video game, she felt like one of those NPCs that is going to become important later, and I don't know if she does, but it feels like we'll revisit
it
her at
depends if
some
they go
point.
back. Yeah, it depends if they go back to Philly.
Yeah,
Um,
because she
because even like that other lady that she's like yelling at
yeah.
was kind of
But
funny because she's
she the way I describe it is that lady in the shop almost felt like a quest giver in the game. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
It almost felt like, okay, here's a quest giver. And that brings me on to something I love that they've been doing over the course of these first few episodes, is that they're not avoiding the fact that in the game you get distracted by side quests all the time, and there's a few lines of dialogue that
yeah. He even
reference it.
says, yeah,
It's very cleverly written. Like I think it's so clever, and you can tell that the people making this show actually know about the games, even if they haven't played them. And
yeah. Like you can see like slightly off topic there. Like you can see that the 8 episodes, I think that they probably wanted to do more
yeah,
episodes because like when the one guy becomes the squire to the Brotherhood of Legion to the guy in the armor, the guy's like, I'm bored, I want to shoot stuff. And he gets out, and then later, like within just minutes of them walking, they find where their target was.
yeah, I know, yeah.
Like I'm like,
So it's like
that's
they cut
way
something
too
out, right? It's like they cut
it
something
yeah,
there.
like honestly, like my little fix for that would have been, the dog when he comes out of the cave with the hand. If
Yes,
the hand would have had some type of switch with like a beeping thing, and then it's like, oh, hey, yeah, I found a dormant like emergency tag or whatever. Let's head there. If
yes,
just that,
yeah.
just that would have been like, okay, that's how they get there. But no, they just automatically find where the doctor was.
However, I
Like
must say
everybody,
I did laugh because that guy in the suit, I think his name was Knight Titus. Uh, he's an actor called Michael Rappaport, who people might know from Prison Break back in the day and a few other things.
didn't he kind of like show his hands that he wasn't a nice guy? Isn't he that comedian that I can't
I'm
remember?
not
Like,
sure because I don't keep up with him that well,
yeah,
but I do remember like when I saw his face and I was like, I didn't even know he was in this, and
yeah. Like I know,
he's arguably
yeah.
one of the bigger names that has popped up in the show so far. Like,
What didn't he have a show called Titus? Is that the actor?
oh, I don't know. Um,
I'm not. I can't remember. No, no. I think that was a different guy.
but
But no, I was aware
but
of who he was. But
obviously,
he was,
he
yeah,
dies very quickly, which is
yeah,
you know, I thought that was quite funny because he's like, "Give me a stim pack," and then he's really horrible to the guy, and then he just doesn't give him
yeah,
the stim pack, and it's just like, okay.
yeah. Then
However,
he takes the armor.
However, there was one part of that I didn't like. The fact that he killed that like radiated bear with one shot. I
To the
th-
head.
I thought was a little
It
bit
was a
like.
VATS 100% hit. That's what it was.
I mean, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
but yeah, no, I really like it. And then when that other guy, like he then obviously gets the armor, he's feeling all cool, and that leads him to fight the ghoul later in the
yeah,
episode there. I really liked that entire scene just because it was like,
yeah.
and
I'm
then
not
he
feeling
flies off at the
his.
end.
I'm not feeling his arc right now.
Interesting, interesting.
I think he's
I
the
think
weakest of the arcs.
of the three characters, he definitely is the least interesting. But it's just
Yeah,
because, for me, it's because I don't really know where his story is going yet. Whereas with the other two, I can kind of see the path that they're on.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah. And then
interested.
like,
I'm interested to watch more. But yeah, I would say, look, I don't. I'm hesitant to spoil things too much because this is genuinely a really really good show, and I would say many people hold The Last of Us up as the best video game adaptation so far. But from the 4 episodes of Fallout that I've watched, yes, they're very different tonally and they are doing different things. But on a pure adaptation level, I think Fallout is far superior to any other
yeah,
video game adaptation
I
I've
haven't
seen.
seen Last of Us, but then I don't care to just because I don't like the games. So
Yeah.
like the things that I like about the games are its visuals. the tech
Yeah.
and like just aspects of the gameplay, and the show has none of those.
Yeah.
So like
So therefore the
it's
show
based
does
off the
nothing for you.
qualities that I think are the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have no interest on it.
But
But
yeah, but like Fallout, I'm not sure. And look, when we get to the end of Fallout, we'll revisit this conversation as well. I'm
yeah.
not sure how good of a show it is, as in, for someone who hasn't seen the games, hasn't seen them or played them, I'm not sure how much those people would actually enjoy this show, right? I know
Well,
that
actually,
some. Go on.
I'm watching it on Hyperbeam with a whole bunch of people.
Nice.
So and like one of them is a super fan, and then one of them has never heard of Fallout before,
Oh
and
wow.
they absolutely loved it. They absolutely loved it. It's like the super fans going like, "Oh, I hope I see Meyer lurks," or "I hope I see this," or like that. So
um, because I am watching it with some family members as well who aren't gamers, and they enjoy it, but the impression I get is that if it wasn't for them watching it with me, I'm not sure that they would continue to watch it by themselves. So it's kind of like, yeah, we enjoy it, but we wouldn't necessarily go out of our way to watch it by ourselves. Um, but yeah, and it kind of leads us nicely. I guess we might as well get that small bit
well,
of
the last thing I want to say about the show
go
is
on.
in episode 4 when they get to the Super Duper Mart,
Oh God.
Matt Berry
Yeah,
as Mr. Handy
yeah.
is like the best casting that
Yeah.
show has done.
Matt Berry's amazing. Matt Berry's
Like
amazing, period. But yeah.
I thought you were gonna sell me into like sex work or whatever like that. It's like, oh heavens no. I'm just gonna harvest your organs.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
shoots like a dart at her
Do
and
you know
knocks her
what?
out.
It's such a silly thing.
The buzzsaw coming at her chest. Don't
Yeah.
worry, this won't hurt a bit.
But I now want him in the game. Like, he needs to be in the game somewhere in the future. Like,
Yeah.
that needs to happen because his voice, as you said, is just perfect for that. Like, every single
Yeah.
line that he said in that, like, just brilliant. Brilliant. But yes, I really, really, really like it so far. If I was to put a score on it, we don't review that much entertainment, but there is some on the site if you want to go and look at that. If I was to put a score on it right now, 4 episodes in, I would probably have it around an 8 or an 8.5. Just because I think there are small little problems with the show, but on the whole, I'm just amazed at how well they've captured the tone and feel, and how, like I said, it feels like they have a huge amount of respect for the fact that this is a video game, and they're not trying to avoid that, but they're also not pushing it in your face either. And I want to see more adaptations handle things with that sort of love and care. Like, I want to see Halo handled like that. You know. So yeah, but I do want to kind of, because we have a small piece of Fallout news, I believe, so this would be a good time to transition to that, because obviously this show has kind of done its job, right? What's been happening, Jeff?
Yeah, so our news today comes from videogamechronicles.com, so definitely do check them out. This comes from Chris Scullion. Numerous games in the Fallout series have seen their player counts dramatically rise following the release of the Fallout TV show. The show, which is exclusive to Amazon Prime Video, was released in full on April 12th to widespread critical acclaim with a current Rotten Tomatoes rating of 94% and an audience score of 88%. As an apparent result of the show's success, Steam database points out that a number of Fallout games have enjoyed a large increase in concurrent player counts on Steam following its release. While Steam's data DB's posts on Twitter suggest that games have been more than doubling their concurrent player counts, numbers have continued to rise, and now some Fallout games are seeing more than triple their usual numbers. The biggest leap has been enjoyed by Fallout 4, which has been regularly hitting weekend peaks of around 20,000 to 24,000 for the past 6 months, but saw a peak of over 83,000 on Sunday, more than tripling its normal player count. Fallout 76 also saw that from anywhere from between 13,000 to almost 40,000, breaking its all-time peak confirmed player count. And this is all-time, even when the game was first released. Even older games saw notable increases, with Fallout New Vegas going from around 5,000 to almost 20,000, and Fallout 3 Game of the Year Edition going from about 1,000 to over 6,700. It was reported earlier this week that Amazon's Fallout TV show has been renewed for a second season, with production moving to California as part of a tax incentive. The first season, which stars Ella Purnell, Walter Goggins, and Aaron Motten, was shot mostly in New York, with some additional filming taking place in Utah. So yeah, like Fallout 76, I know has been getting a huge bump. Even Fallout
Yeah.
Shelter added a bunch of the TV show stuff.
Mm.
But
What's
Fallout 4 got its next gen patch as well, so it's
Yeah,
on
so
PS5
that's
and
actually
Xbox Series X.
so that's actually coming soon. I believe that the patch releases on the 25th, I think they said. Um but yeah, I am impressed by, because I have actually downloaded quite a few of the Fallout games, because I'm going to revisit Fallout 4 when that patch does release, because I never actually finished Fallout 4. But I also downloaded Fallout 3 and New Vegas, because on Xbox they have the FPS boost, and they've got, they did some good backwards compatibility stuff with them to make them run at 4K and that kind of stuff. But it's really interesting to see Fallout 76 getting a new life, because I know that game has been improved a lot. I know from every single person that's played it over the last few years that it's genuinely a good game now, is the impression that I get.
It was still kind of a good game back then. It just was a different game. Like, it wasn't meant to be the next Fallout game,
Yeah,
and that's what people were like really holding it up to the, like, raking
yeah.
it over the coals essentially.
It was meant to be
Um,
something different, right? It wasn't meant to be the single player Fallout
it was meant to be
experience.
as different as Fallout Shelter was to Fallout. It was not meant to be
Yeah.
Fallout 5,
Whereas
and
now
that's
the
what people
impression
were
I
like.
get is that there's a more traditional Fallout game inside of Fallout 76, which is this massive thing, obviously.
Yeah,
It
they added
is
people and all that stuff.
it's something that I'm keen to go and take a look at, just because the only time I played it was at launch. And back then it just, in my opinion, wasn't really good enough as a video game, and had a lot of issues. But like I said, everything I've heard, especially with all the DLC and stuff they've added, I think it's a much better game now. And I did see earlier today, actually, that Xbox sort of made an announcement of, like, just a reminder that every Fallout game is on Game Pass, including all the DLCs. And I thought, I didn't even realize the DLCs were available on Game Pass, because usually they charge extra for those.
Yeah.
So I may take a look at Fallout 76 at some point. But I did also, because I like owning things, and the entire Fallout franchise has been on sale, the one Fallout game that I didn't own digitally was Fallout New Vegas. So I bought that, and I bought all the DLC for that.
I have the collectors for Fallout New Vegas. I still have the box somewhere.
Nice, nice. Because also, we got a bit of news that we missed the other week because we lost our recording. But obviously, Xbox are doing good things with kind of preservation of games, if you will. And we recently had the announcement that Sarah Bond has restarted the backwards compatibility team, and they're also thinking about forwards compatibility as to how to keep your games running on newer hardware as it comes as well.
Yeah.
And so I've always been a digital person anyway, but I've always been somewhat hesitant about owning very, very much older games on digital. However, in the Xbox and Microsoft ecosystem, that's something I'm a lot less concerned about. than on other platforms, just because the way that they seem to handle supporting these things is much better than everybody else so far. So that's why I picked up Fallout New Vegas there. But we did have, and obviously we'll get to Nintendo later on, but there is another big news story I think that you wanted to talk about, Jeff, because we have someone that used to, for a very brief period of time, work for Xbox, who's been saying some interesting things recently.
Yeah, this one's been kind of an interesting talking point on Twitter and basically other social media platforms. So that is former Blizzard president Mike Ybarra has suggested that players should be able to tip developers after completing a game. Speaking on Twitter, Ybarra said, "When I beat a game, there should be just they should there are some that just leave me in awe of how amazing the experience was. I often thought I wish I could give these folks another $10 or $20 because it was worth it more than my initial $70, and they didn't try and nickel and dime me every second." Ybarra is quick to point out that in the same post that most will dislike the idea, and that we are tired of tipping in everything else. But I view this different from a pressure to tip type scenario. Ybarra lists games such as Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Red Dead Redemption, Baldur's Gate 2, and Baldur's Gate 3 probably meant that one, and Elden Ring as examples of games that have made him consider this tipping model. While many independent developers have virtual tip jars or ways to donate to the studio, it's a rarity in big budget gaming. A user responding, Ybarra suggests that if one was to enjoy a game that much, they could gift a friend the game on Steam, thus buying it twice. This generation of home consoles saw publishers raise prices to $70 in majority of cases, citing economic changes and skyrocketing development costs. However, players have routinely expressed frustration at companies charging that much for games and then implementing microtransactions on top of that $70 fee. Aware of the backlash from players, some publishers have launched microtransaction stores post-release, seemingly in an effort for them not to be highlighted as part of the review process for media. However, this hasn't always been successful. Recently, Tekken players expressed huge frustration to developer Namco Bandai for the introduction of the Tekken Fight Pass. Ybarra's former employer, Blizzard, largely operates on a subscription-based model for its biggest titles, World of Warcraft, but it also regularly sells skins and other items in Overwatch 2 and card packs in Hearthstone, not to mention expensive armor and stuff in Diablo 4. Now, I'll just jump right on this here because when I saw this, I was like, this is somebody that should know full well that that idea would never work.
Yeah.
This is somebody literally who is like the president of the company. And like, this is the thing that just mind boggles me because you'll see some people championing this saying, like, that's a great idea. I would love to give, like, the Elden Ring, like, I would love to give that an extra $10. If you think that a developer is going to see any of that money, if it's not just going to go strictly to the publisher, you're delusional.
Yeah.
Because you get games like Dead Space 2, which EA has said has underperformed to the point where they're not making another one. Dead Space 2 got $200,000 in tips. Do you think that EA Motive would have seen any of that money? Now, let's say, for example, it
What?
only receives $5,000 in tips.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's say there's 600 people or 500 people working on that game. That's like,
Yeah.
again, like,
What I will say though, because I've got a few things to say on this. I actually do agree
yeah,
with you, but I also think that it there the problem is there is a way that what he's talking about could work. It's just very unlikely to ever happen. Um,
yeah.
but
The publishers raise the prices of their games for a reason, to
yeah,
make money.
yeah,
They added microtransactions to make money. If there's another revenue stream coming in, they'll fucking take it.
absolutely. And that's the issue, right? Is this slippery slope thing? If you could actually have it where every company was doing it in good faith. For example, I know a lot of people that didn't play Days Gone till it was on PlayStation Plus, and
Yeah.
and loads of those people said to me, "Oh, I should have bought the game," and I guarantee you that if they had bought the game instead, we would have got a Days Gone 2. Like, I can pretty much guarantee that. And
Like
that's and
the
that
guy that suggested buying it for his friend,
mm,
that's a viable thing
yeah.
because it
And
it garners sales.
what I would say is that's the one reason that I'm somewhat supportive of this tipping idea, is because even though, on a negative sense, yes, the money would only go to the publisher, there is potentially a chance that if a game received a certain amount of money in tips, let's say that, I don't know, you buy, let's say that you buy a game on sale and you play it and you think to yourself, do you know what, that was actually worth full price, and then you tip enough to make it up to full price. Let's say you've saved like 20% on it and you tip that 20% back to them after playing the game. If lots of people did that, there is a scenario where potentially the publisher would look and go, oh, actually, people valued this game way more than we thought. Maybe it is worth making a second game. Maybe it
See,
is worth.
here's another layer.
Mm,
All right. So let's say that someone tips $5.
yeah,
How much is going to the platform holder?
that's true. That's very true. Yeah,
So suddenly they're getting $3 instead of the 5.
yeah, that's
You
very
know,
true. And that's the problem. Is like, I actually do. In theory, I think the idea is a very good idea. In practice, it just wouldn't be able to work. But I do
See, like,
think, but I
yeah.
do think it opens up this interesting conversation of, is there a way to support a game in some sort of official capacity? Because, for example, I did that one person said about how you could gift a game to your friend.
Yeah.
I actually did that with Alan Wake 2 because I liked that game so much. I bought it for a friend of mine on Xbox, because on Xbox you can also gift games, and a lot of people don't know this, but as long as you're in the same region as somebody else, you can gift them a game. And so I did that for a friend of mine because I would have paid double the price for Alan Wake 2. Like, I would have paid happily, £100 for it, which is more.
I paid 100% of the price, and I already regret
it. And it's one of those things where it's like, I do think there has to be a conversation around how we can give further support to games and studios if in hindsight we deem that to be worthy, because I think that go on.
Like, that stuff only works when you are like self-publishing. That's the only thing it works for, is in indie stuff, when they have a Patreon, when they have a Kickstarter, when they have a whatever, like when they have like an actual financial way of backing it.
Or if you are a AAA that is big enough to self-publish yourself, right? So like
I said, if you are self-publishing, then the money directly goes to the people who have made it. But when you are belonging to a corporation like Take-Two or EA or Ubisoft or whatever, that money is going to the publisher.
And this is the thing, it's such a hard conversation, because I want to defend Mike slightly, because I think that some people were jumping on this and saying, oh, it's just this big business guy trying to figure out a way to make more money out of people. And I don't think that's the angle he was coming at it from. I think that people have to remember, yes, okay, he was president of Blizzard, but he's also a gamer. And I think he was just making a very genuine comment. And I think what he was trying to suggest isn't as nefarious or bad as people think. The problem is that what he suggested in reality wouldn't work very well, because these big corporations cannot be trusted, right? Like, I'll go back to using Days Gone as the example. let's say that every single person who played Days Gone on PlayStation Plus went, do you know what? Actually, that game would have been worth $20, and they all tipped $20, right?
Yeah.
Potentially, PlayStation and Sony would have looked at that and gone, oh, maybe we should have made a Days Gone 2. Maybe we should, and let's think about it. But there's also a chance where they would have just gone, oh, alright, some nice extra money, let's use it on something else. And that's the problem. Unless there was something set up where you could guarantee that that money would only go to supporting that team, even if it was on a different project or whatever, then it would be fine. If it would go directly to the studio themselves, I don't think it would be an issue. But it's when it goes into this big publisher pot, and they might then close down that studio or fire the staff that have just made the game that you've tipped, right? And we spoke about Take-Two, and it's like, we just heard yesterday, I believe, that they are going to be cutting some staff soon, didn't we, Jeff?
Yeah, so we'll jump into that there. So this is what I find really funny. And, well, not really funny, sad. You got to think of a developer that is making hand over fist.
Yeah.
And that has got to be Take-Two. Now, granted, Grand Theft Auto 6 is a very expensive game to make.
Yes. However, that
but
game's
GTA
also
Online-
going to make billions in profit in just a few months.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So they're cutting 5% of their workforce. So Take-Two Interactive, the publisher behind Grand Theft Auto, has announced plans to cut around 5% of its workforce, which is about 600 people. In a statement published on Tuesday, the company said the cuts will result in the cancellation of an unnamed in-development game projects. Take-Two estimates the cuts will save it around $160 million annually. The plan is to expect to be largely complete by December 31st of 2024. Weeks after it was confirmed that Take-Two is acquiring Borderlands maker Gearbox in a deal worth $460 million. Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick has indicated that it is intended to reduce costs earlier this year, but claimed at the time that there were no current plans for layoffs. Last February, the company implemented an earlier cost reduction program, which saw it trying to make annual savings of about $50 million. This resulted in a round of layoffs the following month, with staff at several divisions affected, including its indie publishing label Private Division. In the year since Take-Two's previous cost-cutting reduction, layoffs have become a frequent occurrence across the games industry. Job losses across the industry were widespread in 2023, with 9,000 layoffs estimated, and they don't appear to be slowing this year. So this is like, again, it doesn't matter how successful you are.
Yeah.
You are dropping people.
Yeah.
And the amount of money that Grand Theft Auto Online pulls in.
And that's the thing. There's no excuse for any of these cuts from anyone anyway, unless you are a small independent studio that literally survives game to game. Somebody like the Immortals of Avium developers, right? They had no choice but to cut their staff because the game lost money and they literally cannot afford to keep those people. However, when you're a company like Take-Two Interactive, who make some of the most money in the industry on a yearly basis, like Grand Theft Auto Online, I don't know the numbers, but I would still imagine makes a couple of billion in profit per year. Like, people are still spending loads and loads of money, and they are, playing that game all the time. Not only that, but let's remember, Take-Two also own 2K, who make the NBA games, which are microtransaction fests, and make a lot of money. They are good games, but they do make a lot of money through microtransactions. So there's no reason for this, and I think that there's no reason for this other than greed, and I think that they've tried to kind of almost save face slightly by going, yeah, we're only cutting 5%, so that's way less than everybody else. Because we've seen every other studio cutting around 10%, right? That seems to be the industry standard. But when you're making that much money, and when you are on course to make literally billions in profit at some point next year, you have no reason for these cuts other than greed, especially when you've just bought Gearbox for 400 odd million, was it, I believe? And it's
Yeah, and
just
you got to figure like Strauss's like his paycheck is probably that $160 million or something that
precisely. So
they was trying to
it's
recoup.
the and my thing is, look, I'm not a business expert, but I know enough to know that you also have the capacity as a company just to make more things and sell more things, and that would make you more money. Like, you don't need to, you don't actually need to cut to make more money, you know? And that's the problem, is it's just, it's getting quite sickening at this point. Because I understand that all industries go through this, right? But we're talking about a video game industry that makes more money than a lot of industries in the world, and it's and we've got thousands of people losing their jobs, and it doesn't stop. This has been, we talk about this all the time, Jeff, but this has literally been every week for about 7 months now since we've been doing this podcast. There's been some sort of news story related to job cuts or
Yeah.
studio closures and all these other things, and it's really, really upsetting because there's no reason for it. Like I said, the only time that I ever think it's acceptable is when you are a fully self-published company who is potentially living game to game, a small indie studio, because they also have cuts. Let's remember them. We don't hear about them as much, but those studios do have cuts as well. For example, if Remedy came out right now and said, we're cutting 5% of staff, the way I would react to that is completely different than Take Two cutting 5% of staff. Do you know what I mean? Because it's
Mm.
companies in a completely different situation. And this stuff just makes me sad, especially when they've literally got the biggest franchise in the world. Like, I don't know. It's just crazy to me. It really is crazy to me, especially when they've just released a couple of months ago a new WWE game, which I know made money because they're talking about it as one of the best reviewing and best selling 2K games so far. So it's like, come on, man. Like, really? Do you really need to ruin people's lives just for the sake of making a little bit more money? Because you're saving 160 million a year, which you could literally waste on projects every year quite easily. Like, you could have that as a tax write-off on something. Do you know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
it's nuts. It really is nuts. And I hope that anyone affected by this, is able to find other jobs and that it doesn't cause them too many issues, because we saw recently with some of the cuts in the UK, right, that people were kind of worrying about visas and that sort of thing. Um and let's remember that some of 2K's studios, mainly the Rockstar ones, are actually based in the UK. Like, there are, there's a couple of Rockstar studios based in the UK. So if any of those get cuts, it's kind of like could cause issues for people there. I really hope
Hmm.
these people land on their feet. I'm hoping for the best for them, and I'm hoping that at some point we actually see an end to this craziness of cutting people's jobs for no real reason, because it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. But anyway, what other news do we have this week, Jeff?
Well, we'll jump into apparently Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is reportedly underperforming commercially. So that's according to Daniel Ahmed, director of research and insights at Nico Partners, who said the PS5 game has been faring worse than its predecessor following its release in February. Rebirth is underperforming sales-wise, he said on Twitter. It's selling about half of what Remake sold in the same time frame and looks like it'll have a weaker tail prior to any PlayStation Plus-like release. Um, Final Fantasy VII Remake was released for PS4 in April 2020, with the console had an install base of over 100 million units. Shipments of the game topped 3.5 million in the first 3 days, according to publisher Square Enix, um, which has not announced Rebirth sales data. In comparison, Rebirth was released a few months after PS5 hit 50 million sales. Last week, market research firm Ampere Analysis said Rebirth peaked at 2.21 million daily active users, including demo players at launch. Square Enix recently gave fans an update on the status of the third and final part of its Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. In the company's Final Fantasy VII Remake Ultimania book, Rebirth creative director Tetsuya Nomura reportedly said that the third game's main story has already been completed and that he thinks voice recording could start in the near future. Final Fantasy VII Remake series producer Yoshinori Katase also said Square Enix managed to make Rebirth in about 3 years, partly thanks to employee retention. Now that's one thing that I'm going to end the story on.
Mm.
When you have a strong team like that, you can start pumping out games like crazy. It's why Insomniac is so good at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you start to dismantle those teams and take away key people, that's when development takes longer, and therefore it's going to cost you
Yeah,
more
because
money.
you have to replace those people, right? You have to either
That's
replace
why I
those
hate
people
it
or you
had,
have to
had a
find
shitty
other
development.
people. You have to find other people that are already there to do their jobs if you're not going to replace them.
Yeah,
It's crazy, but
but
I'm what I will say is talking quickly on the sales thing here. I'm not too surprised, but I do think there's a couple of things we have to remember. Number one, the install base is much smaller, right? Because when you've got an install base that is roughly half the size, you are limiting your sales to some extent. It's the same reason that there's been the conversations over how much more would these Final Fantasy games sell if they were also on Xbox, right? Because yes, Xbox is a smaller platform, but you would imagine there's a couple of million people there that would buy these Final Fantasy games. Um,
oh yeah,
so but it's interesting because this isn't the first time we've heard about Final Fantasy not really doing that well in sales, and I do wonder whether there is going to be some sort of conversation at Square Enix about, do we keep making these things exclusively, because is it really worth the money? Because yeah, I know that
well,
Sony's paying them well for this exclusivity, right? But are they
yeah,
paying them well enough to have these games not selling well? Do you know what I mean?
yeah. And the thing as well too is like the the lack of sales and Rebirth might also be that PC players are just like, we'll wait this time.
Yeah, that's very true, because last time we knew it was coming to PC, but we didn't know when, right? Whereas this time
Yeah,
we have a bit of a better indication based on the previous time.
yeah,
Um
yeah.
Obviously we heard a similar sort of thing for Final Fantasy 16. Um I think that people are expecting that one to come to Xbox at some point. There has been sort of reports and rumors that that is something that's happening in the future from Jez Corden and people like that. So I'm just really interested to see, because look, Final Fantasy is a franchise I want to do well, and yes, Rebirth hasn't captured me because I love the story, but I'm just not really into that kind of open world right now. I'm suffering. I think I'm catching up to people who all had open world fatigue about 5 years ago and now seem to have grown out of it again. I'm kind of in that place now where that old traditional style open world doesn't really do much for me, and I think it's a big issue in Rebirth.
Yeah, for me, the worst part of that game is its open world. It
Yeah,
just feels like it's padded for padded's sake. But I mean, the rest of the game is
yeah,
pretty neat.
and that's what I was gonna say. I actually really like the rest of it. I don't know, for whatever reason it hasn't called me back, but I think that's why I'm not surprised that it's not selling quite as well. And I think that the fact that they're not reporting the sales tells you that it's actually probably quite bad. That, like, it's probably selling quite badly, because if it was selling reasonably well, they would still report that number, because Square is always good at reporting numbers. Even for Final Fantasy 16, which they said didn't sell very well, and they said that publicly themselves, they still reported that number. So I have a little bit of concern, because look, they're gonna finish off this Final Fantasy 7 remake trilogy either way, I think, because they know that a certain
Oh
number of
yeah,
people are going to buy it.
yeah, because they know
But
they're gonna get another like 3 to 5 million players on PC like
yeah,
within the
but
first week
but
of it
it's just
launching.
but it is a concern, because games in general seem to not be selling as well recently, and I'm not quite sure why. And it goes back to probably the pricing conversation and different world kind of challenges. Like, the economy is crazy at the moment for everybody, I think, and so I think people just aren't buying as many video games. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I really want Final Fantasy to do well, but I wouldn't have if you had asked me before launch, I wouldn't have expected Rebirth to be selling less than Remake. And yes, I know Remake had a bigger install base, and that somewhat plays a part. Of course it does. But usually, a sequel to a beloved game like that, you would expect to sell much better. Because there are people that, you know, didn't buy Rebirth, and maybe, like, didn't buy Remake, sorry, and then maybe they borrowed it off a friend, or maybe they played it when it was free, kind of thing. And maybe if they like the game, they're then going to go and buy Rebirth, right? But that doesn't seem to be happening. So it's going to be interesting to see where that game lands in terms of sales. But one last thing on Final Fantasy, which I know we don't have on the dock. I saw yesterday, and forgive me because I can't remember the source, but one of the news people on Twitter shared that the Final Fantasy games that are on PlayStation Plus are actually all coming off of PlayStation Plus soon. And I thought that that was an interesting little move, because they obviously, I think Square does a good job at selling that franchise around, because at one point all of those games were on Game Pass, and then they all moved to PlayStation Plus, and now they seem like they're going to be coming off of PlayStation Plus shortly. But yeah, I'll keep a keen eye on the sales here for this game, because I want this franchise to do well. I don't like seeing beloved franchises potentially in danger, but I think after 2 games in a row now of not very good sales, there's probably going to be some conversations at Square of, like, what do we do? Because, their most beloved franchise, and arguably their biggest franchise, isn't pulling people in anymore. So are they going to abandon it? Hopefully not, but you never know, do you?
Yeah.
So, do we have anything else before we get to Nintendo?
Well, based on our time here, let's see, because I still want to talk about some of the games we've been playing. So,
Absolutely.
all right, so we'll cover this. This is like a very, very quick story. Nier Automata director Yoko Taro says Stellar Blade is much better than his game. In a new interview with IGN Japan, as translated by Automaton, Taro and Stellar Blade director Kim Hyung-tae both sat down to discuss their respective games. Taro praised Kim, saying he's been a fan of his work ever since his work on Magna Carta series of games. Now, Magna Carta is a Xbox 360 JRPG that I have been dying to replay. Like, this is the type of game that when I have time, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to play that game again.
Nice.
Because the guy that does the main art for that, I love his art. Like, unbelievably. I have to check and see if this is this guy. Because he did a bunch of like comic covers and all that kind of stuff. Like Magna Carta is like that one game that I always regret not seeing through.
Oh wow. Okay.
Um, if you check the art for this game, unbelievably freaking good.
Nice.
So I'm massively wanting to get back into that.
Fantastic.
And says that even though he's the older of the two, he still considers Kim his senior on a professional level. On Kim's latest title, Taro said, Stellar Blade is such an amazing game. I think it's much better than Nier Automata. When asked to elaborate, Taro says he feels Stellar Blade's graphics have reached a completely new generation of quality and told Kim that he's jealous of the game and shows that you have your own company and are working with a like-minded people. Kim, on the other hand, stated that he feels Nier Automata is the better game, saying the more we talk about it, the more I feel like Stellar Blade can't compete. Kim explained that while he's confident at his abilities as an illustrator, he doesn't think he can match Taro when it comes to his writing. I consider myself a visualist, not a storytelling, he said. I've been creating visuals all my life, so I can't quite match what Yoko Taro when it comes to storytelling. I try to make up for it with gameplay. Um, yeah, I gotta check and see if this is the guy
This
that did this.
what this makes me think of is it's just two guys that have an incredible amount of respect for each other and
Oh, it is.
are very good at different things. Jeff's mind has
Oh, it
been
is.
blown.
This is the guy that did that art. Oh my God. Like his art it kind of reminds me of like, I would say a more almost adult version of what like Dragon's Crown kind of
Interesting.
does.
Okay, yeah.
Um, like his stuff is unbelievably good.
Nice.
Um, yeah, it is unbelievably good. I'm gonna send you actually a picture in Discord here of
Yes.
like a general image that he's done.
Let me.
But like his stuff is so good. Like I love his art is just absolutely incredible. And like I had no idea that he was
Oh
the
wow,
guy
yeah.
on
His art's good.
Stellar Blade.
His art's very good.
Like it's really good. So like I'm like on like honestly, I didn't even proof this story when I was reading it to see that he was on Magna Carta.
That's
So I'm
amazing
even more
because
excited.
we just had a moment of your mind really being blown, and that
Yeah,
was
like
amazing.
I'm even more excited now for Stellar Blade, and I completely get the visual look of what Stellar Blade is looking. It just all makes sense now. Um,
That's amazing. That was an
like
amazing moment for this
yeah,
podcast.
his his art is so good.
Yeah.
Like he's honestly in like my top five like artists like of all time.
Nice, nice.
Um,
Yeah,
but
I'm
yeah, like
definitely
yeah, like
interested in Stellar Blade. I like that, like I said, these two guys clearly have a lot of respect for each other and clearly recognize that they're both very good at different things.
can you imagine if they collab on their next
Well, I
game?
was just gonna say that. Like, can you imagine? Because they were talking about how one of them is better at the visual side of things, and the other
They
is
could get a
better at the
2B skin.
storytelling.
They could get a 2B skin for Blade.
That would be cool. That would be cool. Yeah, I'm really intrigued. Obviously, Stellar Blade is coming fairly soon, I believe. Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah, my copy should be here in about 2 weeks.
I will be looking out for your impressions on that in the future. Um, but yeah, I think also we had obviously today a Nintendo Indie World, which we watched before recording. That's why we're having a slightly shorter episode because we're recording slightly later. But there were a few things here that really interested me. So why don't you run
Yeah,
us
so
through the games, Jeff? Because I know you
we'll start
noted
from the
them
top
down.
here. So one game that has been getting a lot of press over the last little while is Little Kitty Big City.
Hmm.
That game's going to be finally coming out. Basically, it's kind of like Untitled Goose Game, but
But a
from
cat.
a cat
Yeah.
perspective.
And
So
I
you're kind of
also
doing a lot of the
saw,
same.
because I don't know if I knew this previously or not, or if anybody else knew this previously, but they announced on their Twitter that the game is coming day one to Game Pass. So there's also that, and that's coming fairly soon. I believe that was May 9th. Is that right? Something like that?
Something like that. Something like that. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely do want to check this out, especially if it's
Yeah,
coming
I've
to Game Pass.
just confirmed May 9th. Definitely day one Game Pass. Interestingly, it seems like no PlayStation release, because it says
Hmm,
coming to Steam, Xbox Series X and S, Game Pass, and Switch on May 9th.
cool. One game that I'm definitely going to be checking out, hopefully getting review code for, is Yars Rising.
That
This is
looked cool.
from Way Forward.
That looked cool.
It's a very kind of flashy Metroidvania. The animations look really, really nice. Um, so this game looks pretty darn impressive. Um, and you have Refined Self, which is like a personality test game. Not
Yeah,
my thing.
not my thing
Um,
either, but I thought it was interesting. Like, I was definitely looking at it and I couldn't quite figure out what it was, first of all, and then when they said, oh, personality, and I was like, okay, that makes more sense.
yeah. Um, might have my roommate, friend of the show, Rebecca, possibly check out Sticky Business. I might convince her to
Yeah.
check that one
This
out.
this one made me
Um,
laugh because I was like, this isn't a game for me, but I know so many people that would genuinely love this game. Like,
yeah, they're like, "Do you like ice cream? Do you like penguins? Put them together." And it's like this little thing and stuff like that. So like, yeah, it's basically just like a sticker game.
yeah.
I mean, like that's what it is. There was another game that they showed on there as well that has that kind of same appeal that I'm gonna recommend to Rebecca as well. Is Stitch. It's kind of like those games where like you know like this
So
puzzle has
so
two and then five and then four and then three
Stitch is
and
the
they
one
can't
that I
overlap.
believe is out today, and that's one of the
Yeah,
ones that I'm actually quite interested in, which I didn't think I would be when they were first talking about it, but because it has that puzzle element to it, um I don't think I'm going to buy the game, but if I can somehow
yeah,
track down some sort of code for it, then I may take a look at it. But yeah,
yeah.
it
It should be
looked
an easy
interesting
enough
enough.
to. It should be easy enough if if you can track it down, go for it. If you need me to, I can take a look and see what I can do.
Nice.
Um, Another game that's coming out that actually looks really good is Anton Blast. It kind of reminds me of like the
Yes.
Wario games.
Yeah, I really liked the look of this one, and obviously there's that speed element to it as well, where they say that when you get to the end of a level, you then have a timer that starts, and essentially the level is going to self-destruct, and you have to get back to the start of the level by the end of the timer. I thought that was a really neat mechanic there that they spoke about.
Yeah. And the visuals for that game looks fantastic.
Yes.
We also have Valley Peaks, which is kind of like this stylized, kind of like low color kind of platformer.
Mhm.
Um, Visually, I'm not sold on it. I think some of the mini games and stuff look
Yeah.
pretty decent.
Yeah, this one didn't
Um,
speak to me too much personally.
yeah. This next one comes from the developer of Sayonara Wild Hearts, which is Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. I think that was the title.
I
I kind of
believe
missed
so,
it at the
yeah.
end. I was trying to figure out how to spell Lorelei. Um, but that looks interesting. Definitely not my kind of game.
No,
But I think
not
visually
one for me
it's
either, but
interesting.
I was definitely struck by the visual presentation of the game,
Yeah,
and also the music that they had on the trailer was really interesting as well.
yeah. Then I think this next game was called Europa. That was the
Yes.
thing that they mentioned a lot.
Looks a little bit
It
like
it
Journey.
yeah, it looks pretty interesting. It's like an open world where he plays
Yeah.
like a kid.
Definitely
Looks pretty
one that I
interesting.
will keep an eye on, because to me it does have those kind of zen, and they speak about it, that the core idea for the game was to create like this zen experience, and it does
Yeah,
have that zen feeling of like a Journey or something like a Abzu, etc. The game's a bit more involved than those games. There's clearly like puzzling mechanics and platforming stuff to do there, but it looks interesting, and I believe they said there was a demo out today for it, and it's coming later this year. So
Yeah. So the next game to me is probably one of my favorite games of the show, and that is TMNT
oh my
Splintered
god,
Fate,
yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
is like I'm I'm honestly I'm gonna try and request 2 codes because
Hopefully,
it's a
yeah,
multiplayer
because I was
game.
gonna say to you,
I'm gonna I'm gonna
yeah,
try and request code for this game because it's like somebody was making a Ninja Turtles game and they're like, but what if Hades?
yeah, yeah,
And like it's like Hades meets TMNT, and I'm like, I'm fucking there for it. It looks like a mixture of some of the different properties because it almost looked like they had the April from the Nickelodeon series.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But like, yeah, it looks fucking awesome.
Mm.
Like it's
The
basically
the
like, yeah,
second
you
they
you do a
said
run, you upgrade your characters.
the second they said TMNT roguelite, I was like, yes, I'm in. Like, end of
Yeah,
discussion.
like Turtles has had kind of a kick in the pants again because like we got like the games coming out based off the movie that just came out.
Mm.
There's that remastered arcade brawler that's coming out at the end of the month. Um, but yeah, a lot of
There's a Ronin game in development as well. I can't remember who's
yeah, it's
developing that, but
Black Forest Games. It's the team that did the Destroy All Humans remakes. So
interesting.
I'm holding my breath on that. Um, to see whether or not that they're because I mean I don't know what that studio's made from like
From a
from a
yeah,
concept of not just remaking a game.
yeah, for
So
sure.
I'm interested to see what they do there. Then we have one game that I'm looking forward to because I reviewed both of the first 2 games. I think I reviewed Cat Quest 2. I'm pretty sure I did. And that is Cat Quest 3, which sees a
I've never
massive
played
graphical leap.
I've never played a Cat Quest game, but this looked great. Like, I want to play this game. um,
Yeah,
so
like they're fun, and this one has like a much cleaner art style, more detailed art style. Everything looks a
it
lot
looked
better. It's not
really
ship combat
nice.
now.
Yeah, it looked really
My only
nice.
complaint with the ship combat is it looked like it was forward facing bullets.
Yes.
So like you have to face like it's not like you're moving the analog stick and then kind of determining where everything
Yeah, you
goes.
have to
So
directly face. It did look like that for sure.
yeah, yeah. Then yeah, so we had Stitch. Then we had which is like a Mega Man style looking game. We had Schism, which kind of borrows some gameplay elements from a game I'm going to be talking about when we talk about the games we've been playing.
Hmm.
There's Animal Well, which looks like a Metroid bubble blob kind of thing where you're moving around where there's animals. We have Duck Detective and the Secret Salami, which is a kind of this like a third person like throwback to like
What a name for a game, though.
Adventure games.
I love that name.
The Secret Salami. Then we had another Crab's Treasure, which we'll likely be reviewing on the site. It's coming to Game Pass, so we'll
Yes,
we'll
one of
certainly
us
give it a
will
shot.
review it. Whoever can get through it, will
Yeah,
will review it.
we'll see how it goes. And then another game that I've never played the other one, but that's Steam World Heist 2, which looks pretty
Yeah,
good.
I didn't even know there was a Steam World heist game, to be honest, and I keep up with the other
I know
Steam
there's
World
Steam World
games.
Dig,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, no, this actually looks pretty good. I know a lot of people were expecting Silksong to be there, but I think there's some marketing stuff with Microsoft on that one.
I've been saying to people, I really think that if that game shadow drops or gets a date anywhere, it's going to be at an Xbox event because it's Game Pass day one. It's been shown the most times at Xbox things. I can't remember whether it was shown at Xbox or Nintendo first,
Well,
because one of
Silksong
them.
was first shown for Xbox because that's when they were saying like everything's here is going to be released in the next 12 months, and then it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah, so it was first shown at an Xbox thing. It's Game Pass day one. It has been shown obviously in one of the Nintendo Directs because it was
And it's been
announced
rated
for
Korea
Switch.
as well too. So
But but yeah, I think it's coming soon. I mean, it's got its rating, right? So if it's got its rating, it's coming soon. It's just when it's coming. I could easily see it being a shadow drop during the Xbox showcase this year. That would be like a nice little easy one for them, and a win because it's not their game, but day one Game Pass is a big
Yeah.
thing, especially for a game like that. But I thought this was a decent showing from Nintendo.
Yeah, like it's one of those things where people are still going to lose their mind that there wasn't some big Nintendo thing released. It's like this is an indie world. That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, they literally tell
Um,
you in the name of the thing.
yeah, but no, there's some decent stuff. That
Yeah.
Yars Rising, I'm excited to try that out. That TMNT Splintered Fate. Like it's when I was looking at that Splintered Fate and I saw that it was a different publisher than what I'm normally used to because it's not Game Mill, which handles most of the Turtles games and stuff like that. I
Yes.
was like, oh crap, I gotta hunt down somebody new. Because I was checking my inbox here and I've got some stuff as well too.
For
Like
sure. Yeah.
for things that we've had contacts for. Um, but no, I'm super excited to try out that Ninja Turtles game. I will say that I'm probably just going to flat out buy it if I can't get code for it
Yeah, I mean
because
that
it
makes
is
sense because I will
looking great.
probably just buy it as well if we don't get code because it genuinely looks great. Like that was one of the best looking things from this entire show. And I can
Yeah,
see that speaking to a lot of people as well because, like you said,
like
it is literally TMNT crossed with Hades. That's what it looks like.
yeah. So like Little Kitty Big City, I think looks fantastic. Anton Blast looks fantastic. TMT Splinter's Fate, Cat Quest 3, and the another Crab's Treasure for me are the games
I agree. I
from that
agree. All,
list that
all
I'm
of
like,
those all of
yeah,
those are the ones where I'm like, yeah, I definitely want to play those games. And then there were a couple
yeah,
of others where I was like, oh, I'm interested. Like, I'm interested enough that I would play them, but I'm not going to go out of my way to necessarily, like that Stitch game, like I was saying, if I can track it down, I will check it out and do a review for it. If I can't, then I won't. It's kind of one of, sometimes you have to make decisions like that. I'm playing a couple of things for review at the moment, which I guess I can actually talk about. So why don't we get into what we've been playing, Jeff?
sure.
Because I've been playing a few things. I'm going to talk first about uh, House Flipper 2, as that's the one that I've played the most of so far. I will be reviewing it for the site. It will be coming at some point in the next week or so. And I'm very impressed. Unlike with Planet Zoo, which I recently reviewed for the site, and you can see up on Analog Stick Gaming now. I'll link it below. House Flipper 2 translates very well to controller. There is one small issue with it being on controller, but that is something you can tweak to your liking, which is the sensitivity of moving the actual cursor to place or do certain things is a little bit finicky on controller because it kind of requires slightly more precise movement than you can actually do with a controller, if that makes sense. But on the whole, what I'd say so far, without giving too much away, is like it's a better looking game than the first one. They've improved some of the actual tasks, and it's a very zen like experience. If anyone's played Power Wash Simulator, for example, it's a similar sort of experience to that, where you can just play, build up these houses. Like there's a sandbox mode where you can just build whatever you want and have everything unlocked kind of immediately, or you can do a campaign which is you essentially running your own little business almost, where you're doing jobs for people such as helping them unpack their stuff, clear up a certain room, maybe repair a wall in their house, that kind of thing. And you earn money from that stuff, and then you eventually, once you've earned enough money, you can buy houses, hence House Flipper, do those houses up and sell them for a profit, right? And you can create some really kind of elaborate, amazing looking things, but you also don't have to do that to get the most out of the game. And I think that that's one thing. One of the taglines for this game is more than just a simulator. And I think that they've kind of nailed that, because the first game, although good, was almost too much of a simulator and didn't quite have enough video game in it, if that makes sense. Whereas this one, they've stripped back some of the slightly more annoying things and made it more of a game to play. And I'm really impressed. I'm only sort of 5 to 6 hours into it at the moment, and I'll play a few. I'm gonna play another handful of hours before I review it, just to make sure that I've kind of experienced everything it has to offer. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. The other thing that I've played quite well, I've tried to play quite a bit of, is Onzo, which is a FPS World War One multiplayer game, which we were provided code for, and I'll try my best to review, but it's gonna be a difficult one because, as Jeff knows, unfortunately the servers are essentially dead for this video game. Like I've never seen more than around 90 people playing on the servers. You can play with bots, and it is a shame actually, because what I would say is, although this isn't the best FPS game ever, it's certainly better than some of the other options out there. And when I've been able to get into a game, I have had fun playing it. So, it's not, I'm not going to be reviewing this and giving it like a 3 out of 10, for example. There's a decent game here from what I can tell. I just don't know if I just don't know if I can experience enough of it to actually do a review, because obviously when you're playing with bots, the experience is completely different than playing against actual players, and that's kind of one of the things. They have a time limited mode right now called Ascent, which is essentially you are either an attacking or defending team, and you either have to stop the team making their way up this mountain, or you have to make your way up a mountain. But I can't even play that mode to test it, because I've never seen more than like 2 or 3 people in a game playing it. So it's a really hard one, and
Jordan,
hello?
I'm just gonna turn my headset off and then on.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Right.
And yeah, I've been having a bit of a problem, like I said, playing enough of that to do a review for it. But, I have enjoyed, or I've had fun with what I have been able to play. And whether I do a full review or not remains to be seen, just because, like I said, I am also working on the House Flipper 2 review, and there is something that I should be receiving today for review as well. I can't tell you what that is yet, but that's a game that would take priority over these other things that I'm working on. And so depending on what happens, you may or may not get a review for Izonzo, but I will continue to talk about it as I try and play it more, because it is actually a game that I've had enough fun with that I would like to try and play more of, just to see how good it really is. I can't hear you right now, Jeff. So I don't know if your audio is being captured right now by Discord or anything. Maybe check your Discord settings. Jeff is having a bit of an audio.
All right, how about now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, and your audio is still being captured, so you're good. What did you just say?
That Ascent mode looks really awesome, but yeah, like you were saying, like at most you've seen like 4 or 5 people playing it.
Yeah, so I literally can't, and from what I can gather, like, if you're defending, for example, you can literally throw stones down, like you can throw rocks at people and try and knock them off and things like that. It does look cool. There's just not enough people even playing the game for me to try it.
And especially for being a time limited mode, because like the mode's only available for like what, another like week or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's why I expected a lot of people to be playing that mode. But like I said, and Jeff, because I've sent you several pictures now. I have checked this game at different times, and the servers are essentially dead. Unfortunately, like there's very few people playing this game. Like I would imagine that across all the servers in the world, there's probably less than 1,000 people playing this game, and that's a real shame because I know for a fact that there are FPS games that are not as good as this game that more people are playing. And I don't even
Yeah.
need to play more of this game to say that. Like, this is a middle of the road from what I've played FPS game. But when you think of how many FPS games are actually out there and how many options you have, middle of the road isn't bad. Like, middle of the road is a decent FPS game that you can have fun with. And that's what Izonzo seems to be. There's just not enough people playing it. So, whether I do a full review or not, like I said, remains to be seen. There is a couple more things I want to quickly mention before we move on to you there, Jeff. But I've been playing a few. I've been revisiting a few older things as well, as I said I would do. So I revisited the first Watch Dogs because I decided to sign up to Ubisoft Plus. I got like a free month of Ubisoft Plus, so I thought, I'll use that. And then because I had it, I was like, I wonder what some of these games look like on PC because I never got to play them on PC back in the day. And so I loaded up Watch Dogs, and on PC it's such a better looking game. It still doesn't look like that E3 2012 trailer. Hopefully one day we'll get a remake of Watch Dogs that actually looks like that. That would be quite cool. But man, that first Watch Dogs, I wish that the tone of that first game had continued rather than going into this silly, weird thing that they did. I don't hate Watch Dogs 2 or even Watch Dogs Legion. I think they're good games. But there was something different about that first Watch Dogs game, and I think that if you go back and play it now, I can imagine a lot more people appreciating it much more in hindsight, and I think that that's why the main character from the first Watch Dogs, Aiden Pierce, actually became this weirdly beloved character years later, because people liked when he showed up in Watch Dogs as there was a DLC episode involving him. People really liked that. So yeah, it's interesting to look back at a game like that and think, actually a lot of these things were ahead of their time. They did the kind of parkour traversal stuff which they started doing there. More of that was obviously in Watch Dogs 2. But it's a really good experience. And then a franchise that I'm planning to revisit over the next sort of year or so when I get time between reviews and other things is the Splinter Cell franchise. Because obviously we know that Ubisoft are remaking that first Splinter Cell game. And I haven't played that first Splinter Cell game since the initial release. So what I would like to do is play that game and then hopefully hear about the Splinter Cell remake at some point in the summer. I don't know, that's kind of wishful thinking from me, but I'm hoping.
Yeah, I mean, it'll depend as well too, because like this is a different Ubisoft team that's working on it. Like it's not going to have Michael Ironside. Like it's going to definitely be a different kind of game.
It is for sure, but what I'm hoping is that they'll take some of the lessons they learned from over the course of the franchise and actually make it a better game, right? Because that's what a lot of these other remakes from other companies are doing. So, like I said, I have my fingers crossed that we potentially hear some news from the Splinter Cell remake in Ubisoft's summer showcase, if they have one. So I'll be replaying that franchise over the next year or so. But other than that, I haven't really played much. However, I know that you have, Jeff. So what have you been playing?
Yeah, I'll talk more on it when I've got more time to kind of invest into it. But I've also been playing Song of Nunu, which is kind of like a spin-off for the League of Legends stuff. I got it on Switch because it was on sale. You basically play as like a little boy and then kind of like a Yeti, and then they kind of team up to do certain things, solving puzzles, fighting combat.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
very charming platformer. Um, it has been
That
fantastic.
actually
I've only spent maybe about an
that's
hour.
that sounds really interesting. Like on a concept level, that sounds really interesting to me. So I'll be intrigued to hear more about that for sure when you've played more. And I might
Yeah,
even
it's kind of a it's kind of a neat little game.
I might even check it out myself because to me that sounds almost like, how can I describe it? What was that? What was that PlayStation game where you had the weird bird thing? um. Oh, what was it called? Was it The Last Guardian?
Last Guardian, yeah.
It
Yeah,
almost
Last Guardian was really fun.
it almost sounds somewhat like that though. Do you know what I mean? On a conceptual level, where it's like you got this boy and you have this other thing that's kind of helping
Kind of.
him.
I would say it's more like I would say it's way more like Machine in the Forsaken Kingdom,
Ah,
where
interesting. Okay.
you you've got your standard character, you've got your kind of big, kind of like bulking monster thing and stuff, but you're not really controlling him around until you go to him and then he picks you up, puts him on a back, and then you control him and you can climb up and you can jump from things to things. You have your little
Nice.
slingshot that you can kind of hit stuff, and it's really nice little charming game. It's got a really nice art style to it. The production values seem pretty decent. Um, but no, it's actually kind of kind of a neat little game. I've really liked what the League of Legends guys have kind of done in regards to letting other developers kind of sample their characters and kind of like enriching their characters and their world. I haven't seen a bad League of Legends game so far. I reviewed The Ruined King, which was by Airship Syndicate, which is I think is a fantastic spiritual successor to Battle Chasers. Um, and I've also played a little bit of Mage Seeker. That's one game I definitely do want to get back to playing more of. But the next game that I'll talk about is the next game that I'll be putting a review out for. I'm hoping to have a review out for before the weekend, and then I'll jump back into my Dragon's Dogma review, which is about half done. And that is Erebon Shadow Legacy. Now, a lot of people may know that this was a game that originally was supposed to come to Xbox Game Pass on day one, but I don't know the circumstances that
All I
stopped that.
all
They
I
did
know
lose
is
their
that
publishing
they
deal.
yeah they separated from their publisher, and they said that as
Yeah.
a result of that, the game would no longer be on Game Pass day one. But they were still hoping to bring it to Xbox at some point in
So
the future.
it's on Steam. So it's on Steam right now. I've been playing it on the Steam Deck. It runs extremely good. There's one area later in the game that it doesn't seem to run terribly great. It's not Steam Deck verified as well too, but still it runs extremely well. So basically, the concept of the game is you play as Ayane, and she is the last of her kind. She's an Erebon, and they're a type of people that can kind of dip into the shadows, and you do this in a similar way to like dipping into the ink in Splatoon, where if there's a shadow, you can kind of dip in and then you can kind of move around in it and then jump out. Um, I would say that the game is pretty limited in regards to what you can kind of do. When you see the trailer for that game, you're zipping in the shadows and then jumping and moving all around, and you don't really do that to its full extent. Not in the way that the trailer kind of showed, because the trailer kind of shows this like stylized type of thing. But you play as Ayane, and she's doing this tutorial quest for this company called the Helios Corporation. And they've kind of solved the energy crisis, so they are essentially mankind's savior. And so at the something happens at the end of this tutorialization, and the dialogue and the story stuff is really good. That's one thing I will say, that the strength of this game is like the story is fine up until a point, and then it's amazing. but the dialogue and the characterization of these characters is really well done. There'll be parts in the game where you'll think something and she'll say it. Like it's that type of forward thinking for the writing that's really good.
That's good. Yeah,
And
I
then
like that.
finding out you end up finding out that there's something kind of sinister about the Helios Corporation, which again is not an original idea.
No, no.
Then you end up teaming up with like the supposed terrorists, which again, are not an original idea. And you kind of go through these quests to kind of find out not only what happened to the Erebon, but how the Helios Corporation is connected, and how a chance encounter with one of the terrorists kind of triggers an additional plot thread that is just as interesting. And the game has multiple endings, so you can kind of see where you're going there. But the crux of what this game does is it basically is a stealth game. So there's zero combat aside from an upgrade you can get that allows you to zap at them when they grab you, because if an enemy grabs you, you're dead. There's no getting away from it other than that one upgrade, and you have to time it just right. But you basically zip into the shadows, and if like a fan's going and the shadow of the fan is going, then you can like pop into where the blades of the shadow are and then follow it
Nice.
around.
Nice.
And it's got some decent puzzle solving. You can go through grates, you'll have to turn off lights to then go through like fences and stuff. Like it's a pretty decent game. I think that it doesn't capitalize on its full ideas as often as it should. There's a couple puzzles and a couple areas that are so incredibly well designed, it makes the other parts of the game stand out as being very bland. But that's about the only things that I can really say negative about it, because like I like the characters, I like the story, the voice acting is really decent. The story gets into some really really cool things. Um, but I think the journey there is not as enticing. Um, but no, it's not a bad game actually at all. Again, it's gonna be coming to Xbox. I don't know about
It
any other
it's
platforms and stuff, but
it's one that when it eventually makes its way to Xbox, I'm definitely going to play it because I remember it because this game actually got revealed at one of the Xbox events. I believe it might have been the first third party showcase they did last year.
yeah, I don't remember any of it because I think
Um,
they've spent the last 5 years making this game.
yeah. And I remember when we saw it, I thought, oh, that looks really interesting. So yeah, I'll definitely be checking it out once it eventually comes to Xbox. I'm glad that I don't have to play it at the moment just because I have too many other things to play anyway. Um, but I'm glad you've enjoyed it. It sounds like it runs fairly well on the Steam Deck, even though it's not verified. So people can enjoy it there if they have that device as well, which is
Yeah, I'm running
nice.
it at ultimate settings on the Steam Deck, and it runs good. There's only one area where I noticed that there was any type of frame rate dip,
Fantastic,
but
fantastic. What else have you been
there's
playing?
different. Oh, that's it. Other than jumping back into Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, I'm in chapter 8, I think, of that game right now.
Nice,
I'm still not seeing
nice.
this. I'm still not seeing this like comparison to Monster Hunter that everybody else has been like talking about. Um,
Interesting, interesting. Okay.
no, it's good. I like the characters. I like the voice acting in the game. It reminds me a lot of Tales of Arise. Um,
Nice.
but no, it's actually been pretty good. But no, it's about the only thing that I can say that I've been playing. There is one game that we'll be dropping a review for next week that I'm under embargo for.
Yes.
Um, I've kind of hinted at it already.
Yes.
But no, it's that's pretty much about it. Because and then we've got I think Stellar Blade's going to be coming out. I'm going to be getting my review out for Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah.
Getting
So
that
by the
going.
well, you're
Um,
seeing this episode tonight, hopefully, if all goes well with the editing. And by the time you see our next episode, we should have several reviews out on the site. So make sure you go and check out the site because, like I said, I'm planning to have the House Flipper 2 review. Jeff's got his Dragon's Dogma review coming up at some point. He's also got a few other things, like he said, an embargoed review that will be coming out at some point next week. Um, so we've got a lot of things going on. I potentially will have another thing that I'm reviewing that's gonna be coming shortly in the future to you all. And yeah, there's a lot of good things going on. I did see, before we actually end this episode, one final piece of news that I think some people might quite like, and that is that PlayStation are bringing their actual PlayStation overlay to PC with the Ghost of Tsushima release, and it's going to support earning trophies. So that's cool. They're investing more
They
into
did
the
that for Greg
PlayStation.
Miller. They did that for Greg Miller so that he'll finally play on PC. That's the whole reason for this.
Yeah.
Because me and the Vampire Survivor guys were like, "Hey, Greg, we brought you a platinum trophy."
Yeah. They literally said, "We heard you, Greg." It was
Yeah.
great. But yeah, I'm pretty happy. I think there's a lot of good stuff going on. Go on, Jeff. What have you got?
Yeah, one last thing before we end the episode. It's kind of something that we unfortunately had where we talked about the last time we tried to record this episode. And I figure we might as well finish the story.
Yes.
Cody Rhodes is our new champion.
Woo!
So WrestleMania Night 2. We're not going to get into all the matches. We're just basically going to
talk about
that
match. Yeah.
Cody Rhodes finally did it. And then but the one thing that kind of sucked is also too that Rhea Ripley is actually injured.
Yeah,
so
she
had
actually
to
got injured the following night. Yeah, that sucks.
That sucks.
Yeah, they're doing some interesting stuff with the bloodline now, so look out for that. But yeah, I'm really, really happy. I think Cody. Look, I've met Cody a couple of times, and obviously when you meet people like that, they're gonna act a certain way or whatever. But Cody feels like a champion. Do you know what I mean? The way he conducts himself as a person is like a champion. The amount of times that I see him interacting with people on Twitter saying, "Oh yeah, we'll sort out something nice for you," or "My friends at so and so will be in touch," and do you know what I mean? And he does some really cool stuff for the fans. I'm glad that he's finally got his moment. It looks like they're building up to him facing either LA Knight or AJ Styles at the next pay-per-view event. So that's going to be interesting.
What a boring match. I don't like any of them.
Interesting.
So I don't know. Like that's a match where the title's not going to change hands.
I mean,
whatsoever.
that title isn't changing hands for quite some time, but I am happy that Cody finally finished his story. He is obviously the cover star of WWE 2K24 as well, so that feels like that felt like they knew something. You know what I mean?
No, I know. So the one thing that I'll end on as well too is when you watch WrestleMania, there is one individual that really brought just as much emotion to that fight as both what Cody and Roman and because you had
everybody else in the match did.
Undertaker came out, you had John Cena come out, you had Jimmy and Jey Uso and Solo, you had all these people come out, and it was just an absolute bullshit match in regards to that respect. It was just crazy. But the thing that made that match even more emotional was one individual that did not even know the outcome, because they have specifically stated that they do not want to know who wins the matches, so that when Samantha Irvin can call out the champion, it's legit and genuine. Yeah. And she was crying as she literally rewarded Cody Rhodes with that, and your new undisputed,
she
Samantha
couldn't
Irvin
even quite say it properly because she had so much emotion, but that made it real because she felt the emotions fans felt. She felt the emotions that Cody was feeling, and she translated
she's wanted that title
so
to
well.
Change hands for years. She tweeted it a long time ago.
She's
tired of Roman.
So they've done an amazing job. And then really happy with them.
And then he let her say it again on Raw, she said it twice. She was so proud of it. She'll go down in history as literally one of the best in-ring announcers in that company's history.
Put it this way, WrestleMania, if you haven't seen it as well, WrestleMania, if you haven't seen it, was so good that it's got Jeff back into watching wrestling. So it achieved something.
Yeah, I missed Raw because I had to drive to Banff. So I caught the last half an hour, I think, with the match with Sami Zayn. I think I
I
saw
mean
some of it.
that bad turn there from Chad Gable was coming for a little while, I think. But I'm excited to see what those two do, and we will speak about more wrestling, I'm sure, on the show, because we are wrestling fans. Wrestling is entertainment. Wrestling is also intrinsically connected to games. Some of the best games on the N64, for example, were wrestling games. Go and search them up if you'd like to. But for now, I think that's all we have for this episode. We will see you next time. Potentially, we might have a guest next time. I'm kind of working on something. So we might have a guest just appearing to have a conversation with us, which will be nice, because normally we only have guests for spoiler casts. Obviously, if you haven't seen our Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth spoiler cast yet, which I did with MBZ, please go and check that out. That's on the YouTube channel, and it should be on the website as well. Jeff puts all of our episodes on the website. And yeah,
I'll have to get that one on there.
we will see you next time. But for now, it's a goodbye from me.